Hello and welcome to Rollerball in Unity. Okay, let's go. Let's start Unity. Okay, so let's create a new project called Rollerball. Make sure it's selected for 3D and then click on Create Project. Okay, so now here we are. So we have our Rollerball tutorial project here. You should have two items in your hierarchy list, a main camera and a directional light. If you don't have it, you will have to add it manually. If you don't have anything listed here, so you go to create light, directional light to create the light. Now the directional light, notice that we have it set to 3 high with a rotation of 50 and minus 30. So you'll need to set that for the directional light. The main camera, you just go to create camera. And when you create the camera, just make sure you rename it to main camera. And the position is going to be 1 high minus 10. So it's sitting back from the original, from the 0.0.0, which is the center. So it's sitting a little bit back from that. Okay, so now that we have this created, we're gonna go ahead and create the floor of the Rollerball tutorial. So you can do this in several ways. You can go create from the hierarchy menu, go 3D object plane. You can click on game object over here, 3D object plane. You can right click in the hierarchy and go 3D object plane. So as you can see, there's several different ways. I'm going to go ahead and stick to the hierarchy and click on plane there. And I will create a nice plane there. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to make it 2 units wide and 2 units 2 units wide on either side. So that's going to be the X, and the Z, we're going to make that 2 units wide. The Y, the height of it, well, plane doesn't have any height at all. So that's why we're not going to worry about the height. Even if we were to put there 2, you wouldn't see a difference. Okay, so let's turn that back to 1. Okay, and now we're going to also change the name. We do that over there in the inspector tab. We can change the name from plane to floor. And that's that. So now we have a nice floor. Now we are a little bit better. So what we need to do is move camera a bit. Maybe a little bit higher. Maybe a bit up. Oh no, that's right. We want that. As you can see with the X, as I increase it, I can increase it. So now I see the whole board. See the edge from here and the edge over there. So that's how I want to look at it. Okay, so let's let's make that 30. There you go. That's a nice view of the entire board. Okay, so now that we have created the floor, change the main camera a bit, so the rotation we set it to 30, set the Y to 3, 2.5. Yeah, 2.5 is good. And the Z to -12. Okay, so you can still see the whole board and everything. Alright, so now, now that we have created the floor, we're going to create the 4 walls. Okay, so in this area, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Figure out how to zoom out right now. Okay, so let's see if we can look that up quickly. And I want to see zoom. See view navigation. So Alt, right click, and now I can zoom. There we go. That's a nice look. Okay. Okay. Oh, that's so good. Let's see. Okay. So now I can see the whole board. I'm gonna create a cube that's gonna become my wall. So I'm gonna go create 3D object cube, and I'm gonna change this to wall 1. Voila. Now your question will be, okay, where did this go? Well, it's actually in the center, but we need to give it a little bit more of an emphasis and reset. There we go. So now that we've reset it, brought the position back to 0, notice we can see it in the middle there. We made it, didn't actually stay. So let's make it 2 by 2. Okay, see, it's a little bit bigger. We just need it a little bit higher. We don't need it thicker. I'm gonna stick to 1. And now notice that the floor was 2 units wide. When we're talking about a cube object, that means 20. So if I do 20, notice it goes all the way across. Now I wanted to spill over a little bit on the edge, so I can see that the corners are completely covered. So I'm going to make this into 21, have it 0.5 on either side over, and now I just need to move it back to this side of the wall. I'm going to go, okay, -20, oh, wrong way. That should have been Z minus 20. Oh, why did minus 20 not work? Well, even though the floor is 2 units wide, from the center, which is the crossover here, that is 0, 0, 0. So actually from here to the edge, that's just 10 units and another 10 units on this side. Okay, so Z is minus 10. Now I'm going to duplicate it and change it to wall 2. That's my second wall. It is there, just that you can't see it right now. So we're gonna move it to the other side. So guess what? Guess what? Instead of minus 10, it's gonna be plus 10. So we got the second wall. Now I have two objects that represent the wall. So I'm gonna group them together by creating a create empty, changing that to walls, and putting my two wall objects in there. So wall 1, wall 2. Okay, now with wall 2 selected, I'm gonna duplicate it by going to edit, duplicate, or I can use the Control D shortcut. So it's gonna be wall 3. And notice when I duplicate it, it will put it in the exact same spot the existing one is in. So now, should be able to see it right there. Oh, it's 111. I see. Okay. So this that's 1 should be 0. Interesting. So that should be 0. So what happened here? See, 4 is 0, 0. Well, this not 0. Huh. So 0, 0. Let's reset this. That's interesting. Okay, so it's actually created below it. Now why? Oh, I see. Okay. See how messed up things can get if you don't make sure you reset everything? This game object here, walls, has to be reset to 0. So now that everything is reset to 0, now it's placed in the right place. So that means this container, the reference point, must be 0. See, the reference point was something else, so that whenever I created an object in there, it would be relative to that. Alright, so we've got wall 1, which we said it was 21 wide, 2 high, and the Z was minus 10. Okay, wall 2, we can just reset this 0, 0. That the position y, that's 10. So now it's all the way to the right. Wall 3. Oh, we needed to change the width of it anyway, because right now it's along the we would normally call height, but in 3D, and that's actually the Z measurement. The Y is the height, X we would say that's the width, Z is the height of the plane. When you look at it from top down, right, let's have a look at it top down. So if I change this to y and zoom out a little bit, So this we would consider this a two-dimensional way of viewing it, because you're looking from the top. So from the top, what we're looking at is, okay, we're looking at it like this. So normally we would say, okay, this is the width over here from the top left to right, and then from top to bottom, that's the height. That's how we would normally look at it in the math terms. But in the 3D scene, the y, the x and the y will be considered actually the height as in the volume of it, whereas the z will be just, okay, that's the distance across. Alright, so now let's finish with wall 3. So this time we need to make z 21, so it goes across, and the height too, so it can match the same height. Now it fits perfectly. All I just need to do now is position it. So it's going to be minus 10. Oh, no, I already did minus 10. Sorry, I did z minus 10. It's the x that needs to be minus 10. So there it is. And then the fourth wall, you have to get it. Wall 4, and the x position is going to be 10. Plus 10 in this case. So now I have a nice enclosed floor with walls on it, so that my ball will not just fly off. Okay, so there are my walls. Now, let's go ahead and create the player. So we're gonna go to the 3D object option and click on sphere. Sphere will create a perfect circle. Now, the problem with when you create it is it's the 0, 0, 0 is inside of the sphere. Notice it goes out in all directions, 1 unit. So when it gets created, it looks like it's in the middle of the floor, sunken in. I don't know if you can see that very well there. You just be able to see it there. Okay, so I'm gonna first change sphere to player, and I'm gonna raise it a bit. Right now it's 1 unit in each direction, so right now it's submerged by half a unit. So I'm gonna change the height to 0.1, and now it's sitting snugly on top of the floor. Perfect. Alright, so now we have the player sorted out. Now let's talk about materials. Right now everything looks very bland. I want to give it some color. So I'm going to create here in the project area, I'm going to create a folder called materials. This is a good idea. Keep everything nice and neat. And then opening this folder, I'm going to right click or click on create here, and I'm going to create a material. This material is going to be the floor. I'm going to call it floor. I'm going to drag and drop it onto the floor, and that will apply it to the floor. And then I'm going to give it some color. Ooh, red and let's stick to red. Okay, so we got nice red floor with white walls, and the player is going to be a different color as well. So I'm going to create a material for the player. So again, create material. I'm going to call it player. Now we know what that material is. Drag it over to player, and now let's choose a bluish color. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so now we have a blue ball, which is going to be the player, the floor, and the walls. All right. So now that we have added some color to it, now let's go ahead and check the player out. So right now I have a transform option in the inspector, a mesh filter, a sphere collider, a mesh renderer. This is all great because this gets added automatically and applied to the object. The sphere collider, that means that when it hits the wall, it knows that there's a wall there and it can't go further. So, and the mesh renderer is the actual sphere itself, the way it looks. Alright, I am going to add a component here under physics called rigid body. So by this I'm telling it, okay, this is an actual body, it will have some mass, it will have some drag, and so forth, and it will have gravity attached to it, so it doesn't fall through the floor. Alright, so with that done, we're gonna actually make it move. So right now, if you were to click on play, nothing happens. If I press the arrow keys, the ball will not move around because I haven't told it to do anything yet. So to do that, we need to add a script. So we're going to go add component, new script, and we're going to call it player controller. Make sure the language is set to C#, and then I'm going to click on create and add. Now, if I go back to assets here, notice this script is being placed here under the assets area. I'm going to create a folder for scripts. And any new scripts, I'm going to drag it there. So Unity will still know that this player controller script is attached to this object. Even though I've moved it around, it will find it properly. Notice it's still there. Okay, so now if I double click on it, it will open the script. Sorry. Now we'll open the script, and my machine will open up in Visual Studio, and your machine might open it in Mono Viewer, but that's totally okay. Doesn't matter which one, so long as it opens up and you can edit it. So all the scripts will always have a start function added to it and an update function. There are other functions, but it will not add them automatically. It's up to you to know which one to add, when to add it, and so forth. Okay, so now that we have our player control script here, we're going to reference the rigid body. So we're gonna go, okay, rigid body. We're gonna assign a variable to it called RB. So that's the reference to it. Now I have to actually get it. So in order to get it, I have to assign the rigid body of the player controller object. So to do this, we're gonna write in the start function, because we want this to grab the rigid body as soon as the game starts, and assign it to the RB variable. So we're gonna write there RB equals get component, and we're using the one with the two greater than and smaller than signs, and then we're going to tell it, okay, get the component. And what kind of component is it? Well, it's a rigid body, right? That's the component that I added. And so just get the rigid body component, and assign it to the RB variable. Voila! So that's all great, but now I have to actually tell it to do something. So we're not going to use the void update. We're going to use the void fixed update function, and we're going to grab the up and down arrow or a WS input, or if let's say you have the game controller connected to the computer, you can reference that. And you don't have to reference it directly. Unity will figure that out for you. All you just have to do is tell it, okay, grab the input up and down and the input left and right for the player object to move into the direction of. So to do that, it's always measured in float. So we're gonna create a float variable called move horizontal. And then we're gonna write input, because that's what we're trying to grab. Get access, and we're gonna write there horizontal. Now we'll get the horizontal. Remember, now we're gonna create one for the vertical. Move vertical, input, get access. Vertical. Voila. Now I have to actually tell the object to move in the direction that we're pressing the keys or your controller. So since it's a 3D object, we're going to move into a 3D point. So we need three sides reference, the X, Y, and Z. So for that, we're going to call it a vector, because it's a vector point that we're moving into. We're going to call it vector, the variable, we're going to call it movement, because that's the movement that we want the player object to move into. So we're going to create a new vector 3 object that will capture the horizontal. That's going to be 0.0f. We don't want it to move height-wise. We want it to move on the board along its width and height, but we don't want it to raise off the board. Move vertical. Okay, and this will create the direction that we want to move into in a three-dimensional way. And then now we just need to tell the player object to move into that direction. We use a function under the rigid body component called add force that will add the force to move into the direction of the movement point. So we're going to add force movement. Okay. I'm going to leave this open. I'm just going to switch Unity over here. So notice here with the player controller script selected, all that I typed is already updated here. So that means I can use it straight away. So if I hit the play button, hit the up and down arrow, notice the ball is moving nicely. Alright, so that's moving nicely. Now we need to create the pickup objects that the player will pick up. I'm gonna create 12 objects, and what's gonna happen is this ball is gonna move over to that, and then once it hits it or comes in contact with, it will pick it up. Alright, we're gonna create a cube for that since we're in the 3D, and we're gonna call it pickup. And what we're going to do is we're going to create also an empty, because we're going to create 12. I'm going to create a container for it. Pickup. Pickups. There you go. And I need to reset that. Notice it's not to 0. Now that's 0. There we go, right there in the middle. That's what we want. So I'm going to drag it to pickups. So now it's under that. You could say folder, but it's actually like a group. So it's under this group. Okay, right now it's in the middle. Don't want it in the middle. I just want it somewhere where the ball has to move towards too. So remember that it's 10 units in either direction from 0. So I'm going to make it go, okay, let's make it go 7 units. So now it's gone 7 units above the ball, but it's still sunken in. I want it to be raised. I'm going to make it raised 0.5. Now let's set it nice and circly. The only thing is it's an object, so what I want to do is reduce the size of it because it's a little bit big. I want it to be smaller than the player object, so it doesn't look like it's swallowing it up. So I'm going to make it 0.5 in the scale. Now it's made it smaller. In effect also, because now it's smaller, it's actually raised above and sort of floating in on top of the floor. So that's perfect. Now I'm gonna slant it a bit because it's a bit boring the way it looks like that. I'm gonna slant it at a 45-degree angle, and notice it's nice and slant. Now it looks a little bit more exciting. It looks like something that we might have to pick up. Alright, so now what we're going to need to do is we need to add some material to it so it can look a bit different from the wall. So yeah, we go to the materials folder and we're going to create a material called pickup. It's going to be applied to all of the pickup objects. So we're going to make that, let's make that yellowish. There we go. You can see a nice bright yellow. Right, so you can see it nicely there. Alright, so going back to assets, click on pickup. Now we want to actually, because right now if we hit play, it doesn't do anything, the pickup object. We want it to stand out, so we're going to add some rotation to it. So to add a rotation, we need to add a new script. We're going to call this pickup controller. Again, C#, create an add, and now it should switch me over to oh no, sorry, it creates the script. I'm going to drag it over to scripts, and I'm going to open up the script. Well, okay, there we go. So here's the pickup controller, and I'm going to open it up again. Oh, when this comes up, make sure you always hit reload all. We'll reload the latest version. So here we have, okay, the class pickup controller. As you can see, a start and update function gets added there. I'm not going to use either one. I'm just going to use a simple a different type of function. So I'm going to create a function called onTrigger. Enter, and it's going to be the collider. That's going to be the collider object. So when it collides, no, not when it collides. When the pickup object gets run, we want it to rotate. No, sorry. No, that's gonna come back later. Okay, forget about that. I'm gonna use the update function, and every frame we want it to rotate a little bit every frame. To do that, we're going to transform the pickup object, and there is a rotate function. Now we just have to tell it the three-dimensional direction that we wanted to rotate in. So we wanted to we're going to need to create a vector 3 because that's what it expects. And the vector 3 point. Sorry, I forgot the new statement. New 3 and the vector point, and it's going to be 15 times 30 times 45. Oh no, not times. What am I doing? 15. The y is going to be 30, and the z is going to be 45 angle. These are angles. And we're going to multiply that, because otherwise it will just give us the same one. We want it to actually change a little bit every time. Change it a little bit, we need to multiply it against the time. The time is always changing, so that's what we're going to use. So time dot delta time, and that should rotate our object. Okay, so let's save all, switch back to Unity, and hit play. Okay, so let's look at the game window, and over here, and you can see it's rotating nicely. Ooh. Right now, if I go up to it, it will collide with it, but nothing will happen. If we go back to pickup, notice this option here that says is trigger. If I have that enabled, I think I have to restart it. And it should just go right through it. Oh, no, it doesn't. Oh, I don't have it. I didn't have it selected when I had the game running, and I checked the is trigger. I have to make sure that the game is not running. Then I can select the is trigger, and now that selection I just made will stay. So now if I go over it, it should go right through it. There we go. Perfect. That's exactly what we want. So from now on, what will happen is whenever this ball will hit that, the is trigger will be will basically tell it, okay, don't collide with it. When you get in contact, you're going to do something, and that's what we're going to apply to the player object. We're going to tell it to actually pick it up. Now we're going to go to the player controller, and we're going to add to the player controller object a function called void onTrigger enter. So when the collider collides with an object, will be run. Now we need to figure out, okay, which object it is. So let me just save and switch back. So now if the ball collides with this object here, we wanted to pick it up. If the ball collides with the walls, we don't want it to pick up the walls. So we need to differentiate the pickup from the walls, and we're going to use a tag for that. So we're going to add a tag called pickup. Okay. Now let's select that tag for the pickup object, and now if I switch back to your script, now I can tell it to look up that that object. Now the reason why we say order is because that's the collider of the object that we are colliding with. So we're going to reference the compare tag function of the game object of the order collider. So from the collider, we're going to go to the game object, and then we're going to compare the tag to see if the tag is pickup. Remember what we wrote just a minute ago? So if the object is the pickup object, then we're going to set the game object going to turn it off by setting it no longer active. So it will still be there, but it will just be deactivated. That's one way to pick it up. Now what happens, normally what you would do is you would delete the object in order to save space and memory. But in this case, we're just setting it as we're just deactivating it. Now you just have to remember that that pickup object will stay there even though it's not there after the ball picks it up. Now let's see if that works. So if I move the ball forward, right now nothing is happening. I wonder why. Let's have a look at the script. Let's see, is the S trigger option selected there? Yeah. But what are we missing here? Here's let's have a look here. Okay, so okay, well, let's have a look here. Oh, I didn't save anything. Alright, so save it. all over it. There we go. So now it's set it to false. Notice there, all it did was basically remove the check mark there. The reason why it wasn't working earlier is because we forgot to save. Okay, make sure you save everything before you run the game when it comes to your scripts. If you want to make sure it is saved, you can always go to the scripts folder and check the scripts file, which will give you a preview to see if your code is there. If your code isn't there, then it didn't get updated. Alright, so now we're going to create 12 of these. We created one, so we just need to create 11. We're going to use the duplicate function. So now notice here I actually wanted the top-down view, so it's easier to place them around the floor. I'm going to click edit duplicate, move it across here, edit duplicate. Make sure you grab this little square here. We don't want to move it just across the board. Edit duplicate. Notice it's yellow and everything, so it's already done. Didn't forget to do one more thing. Okay, voila. Now we have 12 objects around. Okay, so now if we run across the game, I move the ball in the direction of the pickup objects. We'll pick them up. Okay, alright, so now it's working perfectly the way we wanted it. So now what we want to do is we want to make the camera follow the player. So whenever the camera is moving, when the player is moving, we want it to follow it. Right now, just looking at the whole board as a whole. So we wanted to stay in this direction. We just wanted to follow the ball like up and down and so forth. Okay, so I'm going to change the rotation to 45. Make it a little higher. There we go. That looks a little bit better. And that might. That's good. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add a script. Let's see here. To the camera object, and we're going to tell it to follow the player object. So we're going to add a component, new script. We're going to call it camera controller. So notice it will create it in the assets folder, and it's up to you to move it to the scripts folder. Everything is nice and neat in the scripts folder. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and launch the camera controller. Click on the ball, and we have our camera controller script. So here we're going to need to reference the player game object. Okay. So first I have to add the player object here. So I'm going to click on, I'm going to type in public game object player. Now, why public? Because I'm gonna actually reference it from Unity. I have to reference it here. So, and I'm going to also create a reference point that will be changing all the time. I'm gonna type in the word private because it's just gonna be for the script. We don't need to reference it outside of the script. That's gonna be my offset. Oh, I typed it wrong. Vector. Okay. So then, when the game starts, we want to calculate the distance between the position of the player and the camera. So offset equals transform position. So that will give us the position of camera minus player transform position. So we're taking the camera position minus the player position will give us the offset distance between the camera and the player. And we all want to keep that always the same. So when I move the player forward, the camera will move forward. So, but that distance is going to be the same. It's not going to get closer or further away from the sphere. Okay, so we're going to add a new function called void. Void late update. Here is where we're going to change the position of the camera to the player position plus the offset, the distance between the two. So this, whenever the player moves, this late update function will be run, and the position of the camera will follow the position of the player and keep the distance between it the same. So now let's see if it runs. If I were to go back to Unity, hit the run. There we go. Oh, there we go. So now I'm moving the object forward. Oh, I see. It's complaining because I didn't reference the player object, the variable player. So if I click on camera, I go down to script. Notice right now I haven't assigned it anything. So I'm going to click on player. Oops. I'm going to click and hold on player and drag it there. So now I have assigned the player object to the player variable in this script. Hit play. And now when I move the ball forward, the camera follows it. move back, camera follows it, left and right, and so forth. Okay, perfect. So now the camera is following the ball around. Exactly what we want. Okay, so now we just need to display how many objects have picked up. I want to have some sort of a count here, and then when it reaches to 12, I want to say, okay, you finished the game, you won, and off you go. Alright, so to create this, we're going to add a UI object. That means user interface. That's what the player will see at all times on the screen. So we're going to add a text. Now notice that as soon as I add that, it will create a game object called canvas. Inside of it will create the text, and there's an event system as well that gets added to it. Now we're just going to concentrate on the text. Notice the anchor here. Right now it's in the middle center. We want it to be at the top right. So I'm going to set it to the top right. And notice it didn't actually move it. Why is that? Because notice here you have Shift and Alt. Right now it's set to nothing. So I'm going to hold down the Shift and the Alt key. And now it's set in the top right hand corner of the screen. So remember that. Just because you press that doesn't mean that that it's going to be moved over there. You want to hold down the Alt and Shift key to make sure that it goes all the way to the top right hand corner. Now we want it to be a little bit off the screen because it's a bit too close to the edge of the screen. So I'm going to maybe 10 units down. Now to put it 10 units down, I need to write -10. If I write +10, it will actually move it outside of the screen on the top here. Okay, right now the color is sort of grayish. See, I can either set the color here, or I can even create a material for it as well. I'm just going to set the color to white. Here we go. So now I can see it nicely. Okay. That's the text. Now, when we start the game, we want to actually when we start the game, we want to set this to 0. To count equals 0 because I haven't picked up any objects. Now we're just going to leave the new text as it is. We're going to go to player, open up the player controller script, and then in the start function, I actually need to create a new variable called private, and it's going to be integer count. We're going to set the count to 0. When we first start again, and then we want to display it. Now, before I display it, hit save, go back to Unity. Right now, here it says text. Okay, that's the name of the object right now. We want to actually change it to count text. Why? So that we know that the count text is going to be this over here. That's going to count how many objects I've picked up. Okay, we'll switch back to Unity, and I'm gonna reference that. Count text dot. It doesn't pick up this object. Do you want to know why? Because that object is not referenced. The UI isn't referenced over here, so I have to reference that here first. So I'm going to type in there using Unity engine dot UI. So now it's going to actually reference the user interface. So now if I write down here count text dot why is this not coming up? Oh, I think it's not right. See it. Actually, controller, open this up again. Count text dot. It's not actually referencing it. Oh, okay. I need to. So right now this context and player object, just like for the camera, I had to reference the player object. I have to do the same thing for the player controller. I have to reference this context. So I have to do that over here. It's going to be public. Actually, public. I'm going to move it up here. Public. It's going to be. What is it going to be? It's going to be. Next object. We're going to call it count text. Okay. So if we save this, go back to Unity and look at my player object. I look at the script. Notice I have a context now option, and I'm going to drag the context over here. Now I can reference it. So now if I write there count text dot text equals count. Equals count plus count. So then say okay, count equals whatever the value of count is, which is 0. Notice unlike Java, I don't have to cast it. It will figure it out by itself. Let's see if that runs. When I click on play, this should turn to 0. There we go. Count equals 0. Alright. So that's great. Now what we wanted to do is to add 1 to count every time you pick up an object. You're going to do that over here on the onTrigger enter. So after you set the game object to false, you're going to update the count. Count equals, you can do the trick of plus equals 1. So that will add to the existing variable 1. So it's an int, right now it's 0. Once it picks up the first object, it will change it to 1. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It will keep on adding 1 to the variable every time you pick up an object. Now, if I add 1, I need to actually change the display to show to update it. So I go counter text, text equals count colon plus count. Okay, and if I run this, takes a moment. And then move up. We'll change it to 1. Let's pick up the next one. 2, 3, 4, and so forth. Now, if I go back to the script, I want you to notice something. Notice this statement here is exactly the same as this statement here. So we're calling the same statement twice, different parts of the script. Normally, when you call the same statement in multiple places of the script, you want to make sure that you have that in one place instead of 2 separate places. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to create a function called update text count text. And what that will do is it will run this statement over here. So instead of saying count text.text equals count plus count, we're going to run this function there instead. Start. Let me go on. There we go. So now we have consolidated those 2 statements into this function. So now if we make a change over here, I don't have to worry about making it in 2 places, different places in the code. It's all under one function. Now I hit play. Make sure it still works. Move it up 1. Perfect. Now if I pick up all the objects, it will just count to 12 and do nothing. So I want to be able to say to the player, okay, you have won. Okay, so we're gonna create another UI object called text. We have to make sure we set it to 0. And we want to make sure that it is centered. So shift center. I'm going to change the text to you win. Let's change it to white. There we go. Maybe it'll make it a little bit bigger. Maybe 30. Maybe between 1 should be fine. Let's make 25 is fine. Then we have to see where it is. I want you to notice that even though it's set to 0, 0 and it's set to middle center, the anchor, it's a little bit off to the left. That's because of the alignment here. We have to make sure the alignment is set to center as well. Okay, I think that's good enough. So here we change the text to win text. There we go. Win text. Okay, so we want this to appear when when the game finishes. So I'm gonna deactivate it. So right now you don't see it. So when you run the game, you won't see it. Let's go ahead and run it. See, the you win text is not appearing. So what we want to do is we want to control it over here. So we're going to add a simple if statement. If count is 12, we're going to set the count text. No, not the count text. We're going to set the win text, and we haven't actually referenced it yet. So we need to do the same thing what we did with the context. We need to do the same thing. Text, win text. Okay. Oh, oops. Just like Java, it double equals sign. When comparing, and now if I go to player, I'll have another. There we go, win text. So let's write that over there. So now I'm going to type in win text dot set active. Dot game object set active to true. And that's it, and that will display the win text when you picked up all 12 objects. Okay, let's give it a try. Okay. Oh, there aren't 12 objects, there are 11 objects. Let's see here. Yeah, I think I forgot to add one somewhere. Let's see here. Two, yeah, see over here, I forgot to add one pickup object. Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and take the last one, duplicate it, and add it somewhere over here. A little bit. Okay. Let's try that again. Voila. And that's it, and that's how you create a little role game there. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial. We didn't go into depths about the different void functions that we created there. This is just a quick and dirty tutorial on how to create a rollerball game. Okay, if you want to export it, you can click on File, Build and Run, or you can just build it, whichever way you want. And as you can see here, you have different options. If you want to build it for PC, iOS, Android, Windows Store, whatever you would have installed when you installed Unity. I installed Xbox One, I didn't install Xbox 360, and so forth. See, I can exchange it, put it all to the web, Samsung TV even. Okay, so now once you export it, it will look something like this. It will say rollable data. When you run it, it always asks for the configuration. Because we're using the personal edition, this splash will always come up. And I want you to notice that this particular version that I made earlier, notice the ball moves really fast. It creates a little bit more challenge to move it a bit. So notice that when I press escape, nothing happens. I haven't created an exit function that will close the program. I have to close it like that from the taskbar. So that's some things you can think about. Where you would change the speed of it is in the transform area of the player controller. So you would do that. Let's see here where it says movement. You might need to create a variable called speed and change the movement speed by multiplying this new vector 3 times speed. For example, speed must be a number. It's best to use an integer. You can use a float as well. Okay, well that's it for me. Thank you very much. Have a great day.